Okay, welcome to the first Conservative News site live. I'm in Reading in Berkshire. It is a major town in this rural county. Behind me is Reading's police station. I can see a police car that's coming around the roundabout. This is an active working police station. Officers use this as a base for operations. Also, there are some officers that work as points of contact for the local community, and they've been very busy in recent years. They've been working in the town for up to nearly 10 years. This year would be the 10th year. I've been working here on a posting solidly in the town, looking into some of the issues that there have been prior to arriving here and trying to find out what the problems may be, more particularly who the problems could be, because there had been a huge amount of antisocial behavior. There had been reports passed to me about some terror-related activity unrelated to local places of worship, which made it sound particularly difficult, complex to look into and deal with. And also serious violent crime, not necessarily about Reading, the town, but people who lived here who showed too much activity in regard to violent crime in Berkshire. So Reading was described to me before I came here as being a hub of crime, not just in the town. The town is not divided by crime, but it was described to me as being a hub of crime happening here in different ways, but also, I would say more importantly, as being a place where criminals had been living and had been leaving and coming back to in order to carry out what is now reasonable to describe as a career in crime. Career criminals found it very easy to live here. They found it very easy for some reason. It was a mystery to begin with, obviously, the reason why I came here. They found it easy to live here and to come and go. Initially, that situation describes a sorry state of affairs in a local police force. Now, police forces are very complex operations. People work at varying levels within their respective roles, and that can make it very difficult if there are particular pressures put on their work. And it is necessary to have people from the outside, if you like, who live in the community or who can travel back and forth into the community to shed some light on who it could be. Later in this live stream, I will go over some of the ins and outs of what I've seen, but suffice to say, I began to travel back and forth from Reading, or in and back out of Reading. That was safe enough to do. And I managed to pass over, not to police officers, as I regarded that as being too difficult for me at the time, but to some local individuals who are also very interested in what was happening here. I managed to pass over some information that I picked up just by cursory visits, and that helped me to build a case for coming here on a more permanent basis. I found work here in order to get behind some of the buildings in the local community, some of the organizations, just to see what else there could be. I've got some notes with me. Bear with me in these live streams. I may be reading from my notes. I've got to go through what I've noted before coming here in sequence. I may not get through all of it, but I have been advised to go through what I've got written down. I won't vary from what I've got written on my notepad, just to keep it safe. And also, I know there are plenty of investigations that have already been finalized. I also know that there are some investigations that have been started recently. I'm not going to comment on particular cases. I'm not going to comment on those investigations that are still underway. I am able to talk about the things that I know are safe to go over. I also, I've tried to be careful. Initially, I didn't want to look over the police force itself at all, but I grew increasingly concerned that some of their outgoing staff and also some of their incoming staff were raising red flags anyway. And I threw caution to the wind, and I decided to also take on a role of looking at that as well. So when I say Reading Police this or Reading Police that, I like to speak in a general term because I like to put it in that box. I don't mean just anyone. I also don't mean everyone. Usually I'm referring to particular individuals that I've actually looked at, that I followed, or that I've come across. I have come across a lot of individuals who have had some role to play in the place of the police here in the community that I and others have been less than impressed with, and I have very particular insights about them. And so when I bring something up, I'm not suggesting that I found a victim or I found their family. I'm actually suggesting that I found them. And that's more important to me, that I get to the actual person who said to be doing it. And that can often help take them out of the picture so that people can recover, but also they can be looked at in more detail. That was the important point that I and others found here as we were looking into the situation. We found it's important to get in between everybody so that things could be resolved to begin with, and also that more facts could be drawn out of those situations. So I'm here live outside the police station. It's about 6:15, and it may show on the live stream. It is early in the morning, but I've come here to talk about some of the issues that I've been reporting on. Conservative news site with .com at the end is a website that is hosting a lot of news at present. It's real news, lots of photographs and video footage of people who are guilty, people who are suspected of serious crime here and other parts of the UK. I've been to Edinburgh, I've been into London many times. I've also begun to look into reporting more from Wales. That's been put on hold for a short while, but I was there not so long ago and managed to bring out some facts about Cardiff, where I stayed, and some of the stuff that had been happening there. People at the hands of local criminals and what they were doing, and those things are posted on the website. This live stream is a new effort. It's something that I'm testing out. I'm probably going to keep it, but it's something I'm testing out at the moment, this first opportunity. I want to do these live streams because I want to bring the facts to bear on you, on whoever cares about what is going on in our country. People that stand up for what they believe in, people that represent a constituency, often fall behind in terms of understanding some of the grittier stuff that goes on, stuff that I and others have time to look into. We choose to handle who and what we find in different ways. I like to put it out there on the internet under headings that I've created, and in words that I can control, in terms that I can put down on the page for you. That's why I do that, and that's what I do. Others have the information on their person, and they visit whoever they need to in their contact book in order to talk about it. So, as I said, I've got some notes. I'm going to begin to go through those. I think it's important to stick to what I've got here. It is possible to comment on crime and policing without going into the legal aspect. In some recent posts, I've actually begun to cover a local Crown Court. I've looked into that in depth in loads of detail. I know that what I'm posting is credible, but I'm not going to go into cases. I'm not going to read out case numbers. I'm not going to name legal professionals. I'm actually not going to go near that. I'm just going to go through some of the more recent material that I've got to share. So last night I posted out on our social networks about Reading Police hosting online pedophilia. This is an extremely serious allegation. As many of us are aware, the United Kingdom has been going through this issue of child grooming and child abuse in some detail, not always officially, but a lot of people are working around the clock, using up their own personal time to try to investigate this issue of children being left vulnerable and being abused by gangs in different parts of the country. It isn't just one city, it isn't just the north. Uh, this type of crime doesn't play on tropes. It occurs where people decide to do it. Sometimes they do it in communities that are already struggling. Sometimes they hide it in communities that aren't known to be struggling in that way. Now, accusing a police force of hosting pedophilia, I'm not saying that the police force here is using up its time to host child pornography. Um, what I am suggesting is that people who credibly tip me off that in times past, Reading Police Force has had an issue with a small number of individual officers engaging, supporting, and sometimes facilitating that type of activity. Now, I've said that Reading Police Force hosts it online. That's what I've been told. I mean, that's the accusation people have said that coppers here are keeping child porn on the internet. How true is that? I know that it's been true in the past. I think it's more true to say they were investigated in their domestic setting and computers were found, taken away, and small handheld devices were discovered and also confiscated. It's true to say that's happened before. I don't believe it's happening at the moment. So people are saying that it is happening at the present time. I don't think it is, but I know it has happened before. And I know of some investigators who are looking into it many years back. So this was more at the start of the decade that I've been working around here on and off. They did have to look into that issue before. It's true to say that when there is a lot of crime, there's an upswell of crime in an area, some offices are taken up by, let's say, a more nefarious enthusiasm for getting involved in some of the low hanging fruit. And so that is probably the circumstance regarding that. I've also put, and not necessarily related to Reading, Justin Welby, now the former Archbishop of Canterbury, is being widely accused of downloading child pornography. I know for a fact that isn't true. I know of one particular individual who is an expert at investigating the downloading of child pornography. That sometimes happens as a singular offence. It doesn't mean that the individual is using it to train themselves or prepare themselves to abuse. It doesn't mean they're using it to supplement their abuse when they're not able to do it. Sometimes people are hindered and they're waiting and they look on the internet at this stuff on the dark net, if you like. Some people just download it and watch it. This individual said that it's likely not to be true. Now, it's obvious why people might believe this. The Church of England, the organization that an archbishop leads, has been engulfed in various legal cases with regards to in-person physical abuse of minors. It may be a concern that there are issues within those who are in leadership about their involvement in this, to what degree they may be involved in this type of crime. It's not actually something that comes with the territory. It isn't something that is embedded within the job. If you know anybody who is a minister, if you know anybody who is in lay ministry, you know that it's fairly open, the job. They're not cloistered away. They don't live separately from the community most of the time. They don't have a monkish type of lifestyle. These things don't necessarily crop up all that often. We now know there are certain pretexts for it happening. There are certain warning signs that it could be a potential fault in somebody who may be training for ministry or who's already in ministry. I'm not an expert on that, but there's a lot more understanding around over who does it and why. And so it's not inevitable, but also it's not necessary to accuse just anybody. It's normal to have worries about it, but it's also normal for people to be found innocent and cleared of any guilt of doing it. So I wouldn't take that as being a literal concern about him, but it's just something that police forces may be looking into because of the issue with the Church of England. They may have to cover that as well, but I don't think it's true. Have a look. So going back on to the issue of hosting online pedophilia, I was told 3 servers were found, all in police properties. Now, what that covers is people's houses. It doesn't cover safe houses. It doesn't cover storage facilities that some police forces may use. It doesn't cover, for example, underground car parks like the one underneath Reading Police Station. It doesn't cover training facilities. This would be about domestic settings. 3 servers were found. Now, that does not involve a supercomputer or a large data center type setup. the kind of setup somebody may have in their private residence to mine Bitcoin. This refers to some kind of self-built server that can be used toward hosting material of a low storage capacity. Three types of those setups were found before. Sometimes I believe these cases have to be dealt with in semi-secrecy. It's not to cover their identity or protect them. It's actually to make sure the case can proceed. Sometimes when the situation is volatile, but somebody wants the case to proceed, and usually um, justices want it to go ahead, they have to protect the case somehow in order to make sure that it's possible, because when things are volatile, criminals try to mess the case up and they want it to burst open. They want it to be seen as being a mistake so they can carry on. There are lots of suppliers, and there are also people who will fix these servers, these offline darknet servers, if you like. They act as criminals to do this, and they have an interest to keep it going. It was believed also, and this is before time, before this year, before a few years before now. So this is toward the beginning of people looking into Reading in greater number. It was believed that Reading police officers, some of them ran fake officer units in hotel groups. It was also alleged that they had officers infiltrate venue companies, so large venues, arenas, stadiums, maybe um, concert venues, meeting venues. Apparently, they had some of their colleagues in those messing around, perhaps with getting extra money or arranging abductions, the type of shady crime that can get mixed into that sort of business. It was found that two were definitely doing that. They didn't make a lot of money off it. They didn't actually abduct anybody, but they were found or discovered in the process of trying to do it actually in Bristol. So this is two Reading officers, maybe staff members, found in Bristol trying to achieve that type of crime. One in a hotel in particular, another in an entertainment venue, though they were working together. So that, insofar as that being suggested, that is true. You can tell at the moment, just by going through some of these, that this doesn't have to do with a police force conspiring. What this has to do is with individuals conspiring and sometimes together to try to achieve their crime. But it isn't the bulk of what had been happening in Reading. But it's only also just one example of what is taking place across the UK. As you can imagine, where grooming has taken place, towns and cities have been a lot like Reading, in the sense that the policing has been in disarray. Other officers have struggled with the way that it's been in the course of their careers, but also local communities have been struggling with the presence of gangs and the activity, the movement of children, their own children being missing. This is brought up in court cases too. It was also alleged that Reading officers were threatening solicitors, journalists, and politicians. I put up a photo today of an informant who has been run by some Reading police staff before. He's been paid off, he's been funded to be here, he's been tipped off about what he can do. That is not a rare instance for some officers to work with local community, members of the local community. It's not as serious as the word informant sounds. It doesn't mean that he's intricately worked into local policing. It is opportunistic, but it is based off breaking the law and tipping somebody off illegally. It's not as serious as it may sound in the word, but it's something that somebody's doing. So it's worth bringing out and also suggesting that in the seriousness of what had taken place in Reading and also has taken place in other large towns and cities, that was also happening here too. The fact that it's being brought out, the fact that I can talk about it, shows that a lot of work is going on underneath to try to bring out these sore thumbs, these people, these rough nails who are causing trouble. That frees up communities, some neighborhoods to rest easy, get on with their lives and get on with their work. One accusation had been that some of these officers I've already talked about were using Reading to deny the existence of their crime. It's more likely that they were using their position or position of trust to try to cast doubt early on. So they maybe had ways of denying it, they had ways of excusing themselves. Being a police officer, having been trained, inducted, and also having been trusted already, depending on how much experience they already had here, they would have been able to refute some of the accusations. I believe I believe it was difficult because there were some strong objections to what had been going on, and some notable local figures had been trying to probe who it could be. So they didn't find it easy to refute what had been said, and there were some who left with suspicions that they were lying. But that is a difficult accusation to follow through on if you don't really have credible evidence to go with. And people that don't have the relevant experience don't always have that to hand. They also don't always have the words to use and also the arguments to give with the evidence they've got. Sometimes being the amateur is a good thing. Sometimes being amateur is a drawback, it's a disadvantage. The situation today is a lot different. Officers, shortly after this activity, lots of people looking into it and sometimes calling in to the town to speak to people, officers began to find new courage to do their job. It is a large town. It's a large sprawling town. If you cover the ground, you'll soon find out how many people live here, some of the professions that have a strong showing here, strong presence, and also the development of industry and business in the local area is a very strong pull or draw into the town. That can also bring and attract trouble. Some business owners here who have a good presence here, good footprint, have said to me that they understand that their business would bring in shady types of characters. From time to time, large businesses, successful, strong businesses draw criminals to their premises, and not on purpose, but the fact that they're there is like a pool for criminals also, not just for commuters or workers. They know that, and they also have contingency in place to deal with it, but they also work in line with local policy and in conjunction with local police. So if there's a few people causing trouble in a police station or as part of the local policing staff, they will also know about that already, and they may try to key themselves into it. So you can see where the trouble can begin to develop. Somebody with an astute mind but has gone the wrong way in life could cause a lot of trouble in a short space of time, especially if they're on staff with a local police force. Further claims that were made, I can go over these because time has passed, sufficient time has passed. Police officers were alleged to abuse, well, this is what was said, hundreds of kids at a time in an old leisure centre. That has since been demolished to be replaced with a new one. The reason being that it was that old, so it's not to do with the presence of abuse on the site. There's actually no evidence to suggest that that number of kids were abused at a time. I think that's hyperbole. That's more a local conspiracy. It may be that, as I had seen, some officers use that old leisure centre to exercise, to use the gym, also maybe to swim. And that may have drawn some type of accusation that they used it for other purposes. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think it is a site of abuse. It may be that when there are officers involved in local crime, whatever they also do as part of their life in that area is drawn into it too. I'm sure the staff could testify that apart from whatever the gym members did, there was nothing really going on. I'm sure that locals who also keep check on it, as they've told me, but they could share too, that that was not being used as a location for that, and there wasn't a problem with that there. That not being the case, I found a greater resolve and also confidence to keep going here. If that were true, it would make it very difficult to continue because that is a serious incident. That's a serious crime. and that would need to be covered by a big team, um, a more national facing body, and also with a lot more resources. I couldn't necessarily meddle in that myself. So it's also been claimed that Reading police have tried to use the new leisure centre as an abuse venue, quote unquote. I think on the basis that the old one hadn't been used, I don't think the new one is necessarily targeted as being useful for abuse. It's only opened in the last year or so, and this is a strong time for Reading police anyway. So it's unlikely that a venue is going to be taken over here and is going to be plunged into darkness and used for that type of abuse. It's also unlikely that the local community is struggling with that type of issue in many parts of it. So I don't think that's true. It's worth saying though, because I think where there is a, a recent history of trouble, as in crime, there will be concerns and there'll also be fake news going around. So on local social media, maybe in local forums, Discord groups, there may be things being said. WhatsApp chats may have various things posted and shared. It's worth going through some of those things, rifling through the more common conspiracies to bring out what is true and what isn't. I don't think that is true. Obviously, it's always beneficial to be aware that individuals, solitary individuals, also try to approach people in those venues, but they can't take them over. It's very unlikely. In fact, I think it's impossible to take over a public facility on your own. I don't think people can do that. But those types of individuals are very manipulative, they're very controlling in person, individually with an individual. And so that's one of the effects of their nature, of their character, of where they're going in life. But it's unlikely they'll be able to take it over and invite their mates, if you like. I don't think pedophiles work together. I'm not familiar with pedophiles of that kind forming groups and working together on it. Grooming gangs is a very separate issue. Grooming gangs is a phenomenon that people, I think, are now getting to grips with, but that's a separate type of abuse of minors. I think the one that most of us are more familiar with takes place in an individual's life, and though they may know of each other and they may hook up online, I don't think they're known for hooking up offline and launching those types of raids or takeovers of buildings. I'm going to keep going. I think the audio is working. Just to introduce it again, I'm in Reading in Berkshire. This is the police station just behind me. It's quite a large building. Quite a large number of police staff have worked in here over the years. I've been here about 10 years, on and off looking into what's been going on here. I've been reporting out of here, particularly in the last year since Conservative News site has been set up. I probably would say for the record that Reading Central, as I believe, is a Labour constituency. That's a new constituency boundary. Reading West used to be Conservative, Reading East, Labour, Reading Central is now Labour. I think West Berkshire is the other constituency now. I think that's also Labour. So I have some reason for being here, but also in terms of conservative politics, in terms of a more conservative outlook, policing is vital, and it does matter to policy, particularly within the Conservative Party. I believe it also matters in reform. It's more of a conservative wing in UK politics. I heard when I began to properly and seriously research here in Reading about the crime situation that I was told of personally. One of the very particular accusations that I heard is that Reading police officers ran local law firms for their own benefit and for their own profit. I didn't find much truth to that. I know that individual staff were very concerned about individual policing staff. That's usually true. It's usually true that people have their concerns about other people. I don't believe any were being used or were being weaponized. There may have been separate controversies or separate complaints about some law firms, about some solicitor firms here. I don't know the ins and outs of those, but I'm sure that there had been no crossover between policing and local law bodies or even law societies or uh, companies here that offer legal services. I don't think there's any crossover. That makes it also less complicated. Large scale abuse and also crossover of certain professions makes things very complicated where it happens. One of the more exotic accusations had been that Reading police officers operated leisure cruises to, to abuse kids from all over the UK. Um, that isn't true. Somebody did that I knew and that I spent a day working with did make some inquiries into cruising companies because the grooming gang scandal had begun to build in certain parts of the country. They came back with a negative. Nobody had been using cruise ships to abuse minors in large groups, to take adults on cruises to abuse kids as part of a leisure cruise. There was no evidence that I got from anybody to say that's true. This person said it wasn't true. It's easier to understand how that is unlikely because of the amount of organization, the scale of that type of operation, also where the ship is going. It would travel into other jurisdictions and they would also have to flag it. They would know about it. A leisure centre, it's still involving hundreds of people, as the accusation says, that the effort would be to draw them from across the community. That would be noticed. It wouldn't go unnoticed. It would be obvious. It hasn't come out in any of the um, reports. It hasn't really been said in any of the coverage of grooming. So I don't think it's likely to be true. If anything takes place on cruise ships, it's between individuals, between people. It wouldn't happen in a very large group. I mean, I think we all would know that there would be a lot of activity around cruises if that were the case. I mean, investigators are known for booking cruises themselves and for doing their job during a cruise, but that's as an individual. Sometimes it could be as a couple, but probably it's not usually necessary to look into an entire ship, is it? Not that I've heard. There could be a quasi-religious cult that had a ship once. I mean, I don't know, but we're talking in what the accusation was more general. It wasn't in particular about a cult. In terms of people abusing their job, abusing their position, that type of activity usually isn't true, I think. I haven't come across it. So the stuff I'm going through has been independently verified. I'm not pulling it off an article. I haven't pulled it off a police site. I haven't pulled it off somebody's blog. This has been verified to me independently by real people, by the people that look into it. Sometimes they've let me look at their notes. Sometimes I've seen photographic evidence, not the naughty stuff, but just the stuff they pick up as well to help them understand who is guilty and who isn't, and who's innocent. Independent also means that they've worked on it themselves. They're also not copying and pasting it, and therefore I'm copying and pasting. They are the ones who did the original research. And those people usually have a body of research they've got that they use. They work in and around, in between legal experts. Sometimes they work with judges, with justices to try to inform privately the situation so they understand what they may have to apprehend during an extensive, lengthy court case. As far as I understand, private investigators who came here have finished their work. So they finalised what they're doing. That to me suggests that Reading is pretty much freed up from a lot of the stuff. Some of the people that I photographed or videoed recently are not necessarily doing it, but I know credibly that they have done it. It may be that they've struggled to complete some of their criminal plots recently. It may be they're not doing it at present, but they're definitely known to be strongly suspected of the things that I've noted down. I think that would suggest that Reading has recovered from something that has been a struggle for many of the people that are concerned about the local area, particularly those who are in leadership, not just religious, but also psychological, medical leadership. People who are in political leadership have been very concerned about the stuff they've had to deal with. It's not just been hearsay for some of those in the local authority. They've had to, in confidence, help people, listen to people, share their stories of what's been going on. And I know that a few members of the local authority, local council, I mean, have actually accompanied police officers on their work too. And they have also gained first-hand knowledge of what has been going on in terms of what I've reported on, put on the website, and also alluded to this morning. I know that some people have successfully claimed for some of the abuse they've suffered, not just pedophilic abuse, but sometimes GBH, sometimes attempted abduction, people who've been in coercive situations, and also intimidation, threatenings, that sort of thing. I know that people have successfully found themselves being compensated for what they've been put through. So I know that cases have been successful. We know that it's been a live situation. I know that individuals, they're real victims, there have been real criminals involved, and that real resolutions have been achieved over some of what's gone on, over some of the activity. You'll probably find hints of it or stories about it online somewhere. Maybe you've been sent an email or two from somebody you know, forwarded to you or sent to you directly. And it's always worth cross-referencing what is said. But definitely Reading found itself in a very precarious position. It's a town, from what I know and my own experience, that carries on in certain ways. It's still proud of itself. It's proud of its sporting heritage. It's very proud of how it's built in terms of local industry. In terms of its enthusiasm for life too, people love doing things here, going to different places, very outward looking. But the type of crime that was happening here challenged and threatened all of that for some people. It was very serious. I also know that claims have been lodged against Reading Crown Court. Certain individuals have pursued their complaints against the Crown Court here, magistrates further down the street. There's also a county court in the town centre, and there's Crown Court that's come under a lot of criticism for the way that staff and key legal staff have behaved in their professions in recent years. I know that some people have pursued a case there. I'm not sure about the outcome at the moment or how it's going, the progress of those, but I know that there are people intent on trying to gain justice the way they've been treated in past times. I also know that residents have been reassured about what has been going on. They've been informed about some of the reasons why. They also know that there's further help available. They can speak to people in confidence, but also in context, knowing that there are experts here who understand what has been going on already, and that they are able to take up an opportunity to say more or speak further about what it's been like for them, or if they remember anything. It'd be rare at this point whether they remember anything more, but if something does come to mind, they know who to speak to. But this is not an exceptional place in terms of crime. The grooming gang scandal, if you put it in context in terms of the scale, the numbers of people involved either side, if you put in context the accusations, the type of accusations being made, it really casts the nation in a different light. I don't think many people would be able to now say that we confidently police ourselves. Maybe we do, maybe we're getting a lot better at it. But these types of events knock our confidence. It also casts doubt on people who previously believed that this country has been safe and a secure place to live. Grooming doesn't really suggest that places in the UK have been safe and secure. It suggests there's been a breakdown further than policing in a lot of different ways. There's been a breakdown of services, of empathy, also of understanding of how people are doing, and in terms of our general welfare, about whether things are working. Reading is not an exception. It is just part of the rule of things at the moment that maybe there needs to be more work in the pipeline to strengthen the way things are done. There needs to be greater responsiveness from anybody that works in any particularly senior position when there is credible reason to believe that this type of stuff is going on. And in my opinion, to act on it quickly. It's not just the urgency to shut it down and to stop people from suffering any further. It's actually an urgency to realize that uh, crime gangs are emboldened here for some reason. If they're allowed to do it for some amount of time, they try to get more going, and they try to bring more people in, and they try to grow and increase their footprint, their crime footprint in a local area. That type of expansive activity, that type of movement isn't necessarily understood. Some people may have an old-fashioned view that it's a Jack the Ripper, a type of Myra Hindley person who's the problem. We are now beginning to understand that gangs are more and more interested in trying their luck in the United Kingdom. And with that comes the idea that if they can get a foothold here, they'll only ramp up what they're doing. It won't just be the 5 that turned up, the famous 5 who turn up to break the law. They will bring in a further 15, and it would just go on and on and on for as long as it pleases them. So the idea is not that we bleed for people in the sense that our jobs are driven by passion. It's the idea that we're intelligent with our roles and that we understand that stuff needs to be stopped, and it needs to be stopped as soon as possible. Otherwise, you'll have more victims than just those to deal with. I think that what we've got here in United Kingdom is a way of seeing better the way stuff happens around us. A lot of people study this. A lot of people have already researched it. They know that it really does impact individuals' lives. There's another side to it in that those that work in law enforcement are very passionate and very interested in what they're doing. And they, more than anybody, know how much it means to us that this stuff is combated, that it's fought against. Uh, you will soon realize what a criminal will do if they're left to their own devices. If with you, I mean, you would lose your home, you would lose your friendships, you would lose your health, and you could lose your life. I mean, criminals that are able to run rampant without restraint are willing to take everything from you. Petty crime takes place when there's a lot of pressure and it's not possible to do more. What I found is that criminals in the UK are always willing to do more, but I think it's true to say now they're often not able to. So they resort to petty crime. It's more of a backstop for them, something to fall back on if times are tough for them. But long may they be tough. Long may times be tough for the criminal in the UK. But it has to be worked on. It's not about complaining. People have to bring out facts. That isn't a complaint. People have to come up with solutions. That is not about a complaint. It is about helping ourselves. And it's also about making sure that criminals do not have that opportunity in life. Mhm. Well, that's some of the background of the stuff that's been happening here in this town in Berkshire. I know for a fact that other towns in Berkshire have struggled in similar ways. They have their own way of dealing with it, and they have their own explanations, their own case studies to bring out. But it is an ongoing issue. Crime is not going to go away, and neither should us talking about it, and neither should policing. It's very important also to recognize that the reason why it's been clamped down on, and it's been stamped out here, some of those, all of those issues, it's because of local law enforcement. It's not possible to journalize yourselves out of that rut. It's not possible to report it out of a local area. It has to be forced out. It has to be stamped out, and that happens with a police force. So the dilemma is when you know that there are some shady, iffy people working in a police force. The dilemma is working out how that police force is going to help itself out, and also local areas. That's the only lawful, legitimate, legal way of doing it. We can't do it ourselves en masse together and only. It's got to be in the hands of people that can be held accountable, know broadly how to do it, and have the resources and also the use of force legally to do it, because those criminals are not going to walk off because you say so. You know, the altercations people have, the arguments that people have, criminals are ready to bite back and they're ready to keep going. It's necessary to use force. What I've tended to do here in Reading is I put out what the accusation is. I know for a fact that 90% of the stuff that's being said is true. It's not true of the entire force. I know that forces have staff. I know they have ancillary support staff. I know there are other societies, research bodies that also are very much involved in policing. I haven't isolated the entire workforce and said this is happening. But I like to put it, as I said, in a box. I like to say to people where it is and to make it obvious and clear, but also to repeat what is believed and to try to bring out the truth of what's going on. I found that a simple, direct, straightforward way of noting it is often the way that local law enforcement can begin to work on it, but also with the support of the community. It's not right for me to get embroiled in it, to take up the passion and the emotion. It is right, however, to play a role in stating it and noting it, so that some bridges can be built between people so that it can begin to be dealt with. Neighborhoods are very sticky, very tight community that's not easy to help people out of some of these difficulties at all. And some of the crime in Reading had the characteristic of being very complex in that way. And so it took a lot of sensitive, highly skilled handling to help diffuse some of the situations. But because of that involvement, it clears away, it stops. And that is what a neighborhood needs. When you see it is a neighborhood that is struggling, you can see that the only job to do is to bring it to an end. The story can come later, the lessons will be learned, but first the lesson needs to be built. And that is done by working on the issue. And that actually helps people out of the rut that they're in because of a criminal, because of the crime that criminals are committing. That is an offense against them, against their person. But that's just some of the goings on here in Reading. I knew beforehand a few, well, I didn't know a lot of officers beforehand, but those I did know were very sincere. They were always willing to learn. They were always doing more training. They wanted to upskill and know more. I soon found out why. It's a tough place to police when things are going the opposite direction. When it isn't, it can be a pleasure to police. And I know that officers find it a pleasure to do it here. But it's worth bringing out the reality. Towns and cities in the UK are not always okay. It's not always about empty shops. It's not always about a struggling football team. It's important to bring out when there's an issue with crime, because we know that it can be solved. We know that that's why we've got police forces, because we know that crime can be fought and fighting crime is worthwhile. But sometimes they need a bit of help. They also need some focus and direction in terms of where they should work next if they've got the resources to do it. And that is where other people can join in, so long as we're not hindering any investigation. so long as we're not impersonating any of their particular duties, so long as we're not stopping anything that we don't necessarily see the truth of, it is important for officers to get on with it in whatever context they are in. But it's also vital that other professions and industries and trades that exist that can support it are actually doing that. We ourselves should not be beaten back. We're working in capacities that are supposed to support policing, but we should also make sure that they're working to their potential, because ultimately they're working for us and they're working to keep us safe and they're working to keep us going too. If you see a police force as a backup for what you're doing in life, then you will understand how important it is that it's able to work and work professionally. But getting up to nearly an hour. I'm not going to loiter here for much longer. I want to go live in some other parts of the country. As I said, I've been to Edinburgh, I've been to London, I've begun to look at Wales, particularly Cardiff, I could say Cardiff earlier this year. I want to go live in other locations where I know of activity that's got on. This channel is supposed to look at policing, it's supposed to look at law enforcement, but on the backdrop of actual crimes taking place. Of trying to get you information, of trying to read out some of the stuff that's being said locally, and also trying to bring some clarity. I'm not BBC Verify, I'm not fact checking for you, um, but I hope that I've brought some context for you as to why people are concerned, and also why people talk about pedophilia, why people talk about misdoings in the police force. Why is it that this stuff comes up? Is it that they're paranoid? Is it that they're trying to cause trouble? I can tell you that it's real. Law breaking happens, crime is happening. There are criminals around. Some of them drive cars, some of them are walking everywhere, some cycle, some even have jobs. It's important to bring the reality to bear on this too, but I also want to bring context. So I'll try to go live in other parts of the UK. I'm not um, I'm not kind of avoiding anywhere. I started here because I spent a lot of time here looking into the issues. As I've said, I've gone behind the scenes, if you like, working here on and off, just to find out more. It's important to also do that sensitively to see, who it is that lives here, shops here, works here, that sort of thing. Also to make it safe and to also help me to be safe here, because then I'm at rest and I'm set back in the community. But as I said, I want to pop up in different parts of the country. Um, this live stream will go up when I can do that. I'll also post on conservativenewsite.com ahead of time when that's going to be. I've actually gone live early today. I figured I could take advantage of the fact this is the first one, and also that it's saved on the channel, so you can watch it later. You don't have to join in live, if some of you have. Thanks for watching. But I'll try to stick to a time frame. It may just be a day. I'll give you notice, advance notice in a post of the actual day. But this is something that I want to take to other parts of the country, just to put it back into that context. We're not all rioters. We're not all here to coin and spread conspiracies. We're not all here to follow the bandwagon. We're trying to follow police forces. We're trying to follow the actual story to see where it can be helped, to see where facts are being missed out, and also to bring to light some of the people that are causing us trouble.